Every dog has one, every cat does, every monkey, every lizard and rat, even fish have one. Basically everything with a spine on this planet has a tail, except you. Think about that for a second. We share over 98% of our DNA with chimpanzees, and yet somehow, at some point, both of us just stopped growing them. No stub left over, no leftover flap, nothing at all. So where did it go, and more importantly, why? Because evolution doesn't delete things for no reason. It never has, and scientists did eventually crack it. The answer was stranger than anyone expected. Here's something most people don't know: you actually do have a tail, sort of. Right now, sitting at the very bottom of your spine, there's a cluster of fused bones called the coccyx. Most people call it the tailbone, and that name is more accurate than it sounds. It's not just a random leftover bone doing nothing. It anchors muscles, supports your pelvic floor, and helps you sit without tipping over. But once, a very long time ago, before humans existed in anything like their current form, it was a real tail. Flexible, extended, attached to muscles that could actually move it the way a dog moves its tail right now. And we know this because occasionally a human baby is born with one. It happens. It's rare, but it does happen, a fully formed, fleshy, sometimes moving tail growing right from the base of the spine, anywhere from 2 to 5 centimeters long. Doctors can remove it surgically, and in almost every case the baby grows up completely fine. That's not a mutation in the scary sense. That's an old genetic program, still buried somewhere deep in our DNA, accidentally switching back on during development. The blueprint never fully disappeared, it just got switched off. Now here's where the story gets specific, because people mix this up all the time. Monkeys have tails, apes don't. And that distinction matters enormously, because we are not descended from monkeys, we are apes. And every ape alive today, from gorillas and chimpanzees to orangutans swinging through the forests of Borneo, not one of them has a tail. That's not a coincidence, and it's not a fluke. The split between apes and monkeys happened roughly 25 million years ago, and at some point in that enormous window of time, in a forest full of ancient primates, one lineage quietly stopped growing tails. That lineage eventually became every ape alive today, including us. The question scientists had been asking for over a century was what actually changed. Was it one gene? Was it 100 genes working in combination? A gradual drift across millions of years, or something that happened relatively suddenly? For a long time, nobody really knew. Then in 2023, a team at NYU Langone Health published a paper that basically cracked it open. The researchers started by comparing the genomes of tailless apes, including humans, against the genomes of tailed monkeys, looking specifically for differences in the genes that control tail development during the embryo stage. The gene they zeroed in on was called TBXT, also known as the TBOX gene. Now TBXT shows up in virtually every vertebrate on Earth. It's one of those ancient conserved genes that tells the embryo how to build a proper body axis from scratch. But in apes, the researchers found something unusual buried inside it. A tiny repetitive chunk of DNA called an ALU element had wedged itself into a non-coding region of the gene, basically the space between the parts that actually get read and expressed. At first glance, it seems harmless, but when the gene gets expressed during embryonic development, this little insertion disrupts the splicing process. The result is a shorter, altered protein. And that shorter protein means the tail simply doesn't develop. The researchers confirmed this by engineering the exact same mutation into mice, and the mice came out with significantly shorter tails or no tails at all. 25 million years of evolutionary mystery, cracked by a tiny scrap of rogue DNA that inserted itself in the wrong place at exactly the right moment in history. Okay, so a mutation happened. But mutations happen constantly in every generation, in every species, and most of them disappear within a few generations without leaving a trace. So why did this one spread through an entire population until every ape on Earth lost its tail? That's the real puzzle, and it's where the science gets genuinely interesting. Because researchers don't have one clean answer, they have several compelling theories, and honestly, it's probably all of them working together at once. The first comes down to posture and movement. Ancient apes were beginning to move differently from monkeys, more upright, more weight shifting through the torso. More of that arm over arm swinging through the trees that modern apes still do today. A tail in that context might have started becoming a liability rather than an asset. It adds weight, creates drag, and throws off your center of gravity when you're hanging and swinging rather than running horizontally along branches. so the animals born without one might have simply moved more efficiently. The second theory is about social communication. In many primate species, the tail is a crucial signaling tool. It broadcasts dominance and submission, fear and invitation. But apes were already developing faces capable of extraordinary expression and hands capable of nuanced gesture. If your face and your hands can communicate everything your tail used to communicate, the tail stops pulling its weight, and in evolution, things that stop pulling their weight tend to disappear. A third possibility involves thermoregulation. Losing the tail reduces surface area, which can help an animal retain body heat in cooler environments. No single theory fully closes the case on its own, but stacked together they paint a coherent picture of an animal that simply had less and less use for a tail. And so the animals born without one didn't suffer for it. They survived just as well, often better. But here's the part that genuinely unsettled the researchers at NYU. The same mutation that removed the tail appears to come with a hidden biological cost. When they engineered the mutation into mice and let those mice breed, a significant percentage of the offspring were born with neural tube defects. Serious problems with the spinal cord and brain that formed during early embryonic development. It turns out the same developmental pathway that builds a tail is closely intertwined with the pathway that closes the neural tube, and disrupting one creates real risk in the other. In humans, neural tube defects still occur at a low but meaningful rate. Conditions like spina bifida, where the spinal cord fails to fully close, affecting thousands of babies every year. The researchers believe this connection is not accidental. The mutation that gave every ape a tailless spine may have simultaneously introduced a vulnerability that our species has been carrying ever since. We lost the tail and absorbed the risk along with it. The reason the mutation spread anyway is that most of the time the neural tube closes perfectly fine. The benefit outweighed the cost often enough that natural selection let it through. But the cost never fully went away. So what we're left with is the coccyx, this small, quiet, easily ignored cluster of fused bones at the very base of your spine. And it does considerably more than most people realize. The coccyx serves as the primary attachment point for the levator ani muscle group, which is essentially the hammock of muscle responsible for holding up your pelvic organs. It's involved in childbirth, in normal bowel function, in the basic mechanical stability of sitting upright. People who fracture their coccyx, usually from a fall directly onto a hard surface, consistently describe the pain as both severe and stubbornly long-lasting. Precisely because it's load-bearing in ways the body never stops demanding. The body kept every piece that still served a purpose and let go of everything that didn't. The tail became the tailbone. The tailbone became a structural cornerstone. And here we are, 25 million years later, using our ancient tail remnant to sit in office chairs. There's something almost disorienting about the fact that none of this was planned. Nobody chose it. A random piece of genetic material landed in the wrong spot at the right moment, and the effect cascaded across an entire lineage, reshaping the bodies of every ape that ever lived after that point. Including yours. Your spine ends exactly where it does because of a copying error in a single primate 25 million years ago. That is how evolution actually operates, not as a deliberate architect drawing blueprints, but as a relentless filter sifting through endless accidents, keeping the ones that happen to work. And the accidents that survived long enough became you. The tailless ape who reads, builds cities, launches satellites, and still stops to wonder why it doesn't have a tail. The answer was sitting in your own genome the whole time, waiting for someone to go looking. So the next time you feel your tailbone after a hard fall, or you watch a dog wag its tail and feel some strange, inexplicable pang, remember that those things are connected across an unbroken chain of biology stretching back 25 million years. One mutation swept through a population and quietly erased something that vertebrate life had carried for 500 million years. You lost your tail, you kept the scar. And somewhere deep in your DNA, the old blueprint is still there, switched off but not gone.